The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the sprawling fields of Green Valley Farm. For over a century, the Henderson family had tilled this land, their roots as deep as the ancient oak trees that lined the property. At 65, Samuel Henderson was the third generation to run the farm, a man whose hands bore the calluses of decades of hard work. His father, Thomas, had passed down not just the land but also the values of resilience and respect for the earth. Life on the edge of Green Valley was peaceful, a harmonious blend of nature and labor. The farm was a patchwork of cornfields, orchards, and grazing pastures, a testament to the family's dedication. But that peace was about to be shattered. 2 years ago, the first signs of change appeared. A new development, Silver Ridge Estates, began to rise on the horizon. The developer, a slick-talking man named Victor Langston, had promised to preserve the rural charm of the area. "We're not just building homes. We're creating a community that respects the agricultural heritage of Green Valley," he had said during a town meeting. Samuel had been skeptical but hopeful. The first wave of homeowners seemed friendly enough. Some even stopped by the farm stand to buy fresh produce, commenting on how they loved the authentic country charm. But Samuel knew better than to trust appearances. He had seen how quickly attitudes could change. The trouble began when Eleanor Grayson was elected president of the Silver Ridge Homeowners Association, HOA. A former corporate executive from the city, Eleanor was a woman in her late 40s with a sharp tongue and an even sharper agenda. She ran on a platform of modernization, promising to elevate Silver Ridge to the standards of a luxury resort. Within weeks of taking office, Eleanor started sending letters to Samuel. At first, they were polite, suggesting that the farm's equipment was visually unappealing and that the early morning harvests were disruptive. But the tone quickly shifted. The letters became demands, accusing the farm of creating dust that was hazardous to residents with allergies and noise that disturbed their tranquil lifestyle. Samuel tried to reason with her. He explained that farming was not a 9-to-5 job. It was dictated by the seasons and the weather. He offered compromises, building a fence around the equipment yard, adjusting the harvest schedule when possible, even repainting some of the older machinery. For a while, it seemed to work. The fence was installed, and Samuel instructed his crew to be extra mindful of noise during early hours. But Eleanor wasn't satisfied. She had a VY sound for Silver Ridge, and it didn't include a working farm. What Samuel didn't know was that Eleanor's husband, Richard Grayson, had recently been appointed to the County Zoning Commission. Together, they had a plan to make life so difficult for Samuel that he would have no choice but to sell. The first official blow came on a crisp Tuesday morning. Samuel received a certified letter from the county, informing him that the main access road to his farm, a route his family had used for generations, was being reclassified as a non-commercial route. Effective immediately, any vehicle exceeding certain dimensions was prohibited. Samuel was stunned. He called the county office, but all he got was bureaucratic runaround. "We're just enforcing updated zoning regulations," they said. No one could explain why these regulations needed updating after decades of working just fine. A week later, Eleanor requested a neighborly discussion at the community center. Samuel should have known it was a trap. When he arrived, he found himself facing not just Eleanor but the entire HOA board, their attorney, and a county representative. They called it a mediation, but it felt more like an inquisition. Eleanor handed him a document titled Operational Standards for Agricultural Activities. Inside were restrictions that would make running the farm nearly impossible. Machinery could only operate between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., hours that were utterly impractical for farming. "These hours will minimize disruption to our residents," Eleanor explained, "particularly those working from home who need quiet for their Zoom calls." Samuel couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Farming isn't a desk job," he said. "We work with the seasons and the weather, not someone's conference call schedule." The county representative, a young man who looked like he'd never set foot on a farm, nodded sympathetically before delivering another blow. "We've also received concerns about security," he said. "The workers using your access road aren't residents of Silver Ridge, which creates potential safety issues." Samuel nearly lost his temper. Those workers are the same people who've helped run this farm for years. Some of their families have worked alongside mine for generations. They're not security threats. They're skilled agricultural professionals. But the HOA attorney wasn't finished. Additionally, there are insurance liability concerns with non-residential vehicles using roads maintained by HOA dues. Samuel left the meeting knowing exactly what was happening. This wasn't about noise or aesthetics or security. This was a systematic effort to make farming so difficult that selling would become his only option. The final straw came on a Monday morning in early June. Harvest season was approaching fast, and Samuel needed to move the farm equipment to the eastern fields. He woke at dawn, only to hear his foreman, Miguel, banging on the door. "They've blocked the road, boss." Completely blocked it. Samuel grabbed his truck keys and followed Miguel to the access road. What he saw made his blood boil. Overnight, concrete barriers had been installed, completely cutting off the route they'd used for decades. A large sign read, "No agricultural vehicles by order of County Ordinance 47.3. Samuel immediately called his attorney, Frank, who had helped the family with water rights issues years ago. Frank's response wasn't encouraging. "They've done their homework," he said. "Fighting this in court would take months, maybe years." Samuel didn't have months. He had days before the delay would impact the entire harvest. As he stood there, Eleanor's silver Mercedes glided past the property line. She slowed down just enough to make eye contact, a smug smile on her face. That night, Samuel barely slept. The faces of his crew kept appearing in his mind: Miguel, who had been with the farm for over 20 years, Pedro, whose father had worked alongside Samuel's father, and Maria, the youngest of the crew, who had just started last season. They weren't just employees, they were family. Over breakfast, Samuel's brother, Earl, who had retired from farming but still lived on the property, asked the question that changed everything. "If you can't use your access road, what roads can you legally use?" Samuel's eyes lit up. If they were forcing him off his traditional access routes, then he had every right to use the public roads like any other taxpayer. The main highway that connected Silver Ridge to the interstate ran right past the property line. Samuel called Frank back immediately. "If we move our equipment on public roads, we're within our legal rights, correct?" "Absolutely," Frank confirmed. "Agricultural vehicles are permitted on most county highways as long as they're properly marked with slow moving vehicle signs and follow safety regulations. They can't stop you from using roads that your tax dollars maintain." For the first time since this nightmare began, Samuel felt a glimmer of hope. He gathered his crew around the kitchen table and spread out a county map. "They've blocked our direct route," he explained, tracing his finger along the now-blocked access road. "But there's nothing stopping us from taking the long way around right through the main entrance of Silver Ridge and down Highway 16. Miguel's eyes widened as he caught on. "That's the route all the HOA folks used to commute into the city each morning." "Exactly," Samuel nodded. "And farm equipment has a maximum speed of about 25 miles per hour on public roads, sometimes slower, when pulling implements." Maria, always the practical one, raised a concern. "Boss, that route is 3 times longer than our regular one. It'll burn a lot more fuel, take more time." Samuel knew she was right. This workaround would cost them in fuel, time, and efficiency. But right now, it was their only option to save the harvest. And if it happened to inconvenience certain Silver Ridge residents in the process, well, that was just an unfortunate consequence of their own actions. The next morning, Samuel set his alarm for 4:30 a.m., about 90 minutes before the Silver Ridge morning exodus typically began. Sometimes the best response to unreasonable demands isn't loud protest or angry confrontation. Sometimes it's malicious compliance. Dawn broke clear and cool that Tuesday morning. By 5:30, the entire fleet was lined up along the property edge: 3 tractors, a combine, 2 flatbed trucks, and a sprayer, all perfectly legal on public roads, all painfully slow. "Remember," Samuel told everyone, "safety is our top priority. Follow all traffic laws to the letter, use turn signals, maintain proper following distance, and never exceed the posted minimum speed." Miguel would lead in the oldest tractor, followed by Pedro and the combine. Samuel drove the mid-sized tractor with Earl riding shotgun, while the rest of the crew followed in the remaining vehicles, a perfectly legal convoy of agricultural necessity. At 6:45 a.m., just as the first Mercedes and BMWs began streaming out of Silver Ridge, The farm equipment pulled onto Highway 16. Samuel would never forget the look on the first commuter's face, a middle-aged man in a tailored suit, coffee cup in hand, suddenly confronted with a procession of farm equipment moving at exactly 18 miles per hour. One by one, the luxury vehicles piled up behind them. Some honked impatiently, others tried to pass, only to encounter oncoming traffic and fall back in line. By 7:15, the backup stretched all the way to the Silver Ridge entrance gate. Through his rear VYEW mirror, Samuel spotted Eleanor's silver Mercedes stuck about 20 cars back. Even from that distance, he could see her gesticulating wildly on her phone. He gave her a friendly farmer's wave, and Earl burst into laughter. "Think she's calling the police?" Earl asked. "Probably," Samuel said. "But we're not doing anything wrong." Sure enough, a county sheriff's cruiser appeared about 15 minutes later. Deputy Miller, who Samuel had known since he was a boy, pulled alongside and rolled down his window. "Morning, Samuel," he said, barely suppressing a grin. "Getting some equipment moved, are we?" "That we are, Deputy," Samuel replied. "Our usual access road got mysteriously blocked off, so we're taking the scenic route today." Deputy Miller nodded slowly. "I heard about that. Any idea how long this operation will take?" "Hard to say," Samuel told him. "With our access road blocked, we'll need to move equipment this way for the foreseeable future. Harvest season, you know." Deputy Miller glanced back at the now substantial line of delayed commuters. "Well, you're within your rights on a county highway. Just keep those slow moving vehicle signs VY Seibel." With the tip of his hat and what looked suspiciously like a wink, he drove off. By 8:30, the convoy had reached the eastern fields, and the traffic jam had finally cleared. But the damage was done. Dozens of Silver Ridge residents had arrived late to work, including Eleanor, who Samuel later heard had missed an important client meeting. The real surprise came that afternoon. Samuel's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The caller identified himself as Robert Johnson, an original Silver Ridge homeowner. "I'm not calling to complain," he said, surprising Samuel. "I'm calling to say that some of us think the HOA has gone too far. This vendetta against your farm isn't what we signed up for. Eleanor doesn't speak for all of us." Robert wasn't alone. By evening, 3 more residents had reached out with similar sentiments. The HOA's unity was fracturing, and this was just day one. Word travels fast in farming communities. By Wednesday morning, 3 neighboring farmers had called to offer their support. Jack Walters, whose dairy operation sat just north of Green Valley, was particularly vocal. "Those city folks need to learn they can't just push around people who've been here for generations," he said. "I've got 2 tractors and a silage wagon I'm not using this week. They're yours if you need them." Samuel was touched by the gesture, but explained they had enough equipment. What they needed was solidarity. "Oh, I can help with that too," Jack chuckled. "My access road isn't blocked yet, but I think I need to move some equipment tomorrow morning around 7 a.m. "Sound good." By noon, a loose alliance had formed among the agricultural operations surrounding Silver Ridge. If they could block one farm's access, they could target any of them. This wasn't just Samuel's fight anymore. It had become about preserving a way of life. Meanwhile, Silver Ridge residents were dividing into factions. Robert Johnson had formed an informal group called Reasonable Residents, who recognized that the community's rural setting was part of its charm. They began circulating a petition demanding the HOA rescind its actions against Green Valley Farm. Eleanor, predictably, doubled down. A notice appeared on the Silver Ridge Community Board, stating that the HOA was protecting property values and resident safety from industrial agricultural hazards. She scheduled an emergency HOA meeting for Friday evening to discuss additional measures. Thursday morning, the convoy hit the road again at precisely 6:45 a.m. This time, they weren't alone. Jack's tractors joined from the north, while Bill Henderson's grain trucks entered the procession from the east, all perfectly legal, all excruciatingly slow. The traffic backup now extended nearly 3 miles. Local radio stations began reporting on the agricultural gridlock affecting the Highway 16 corridor. One morning host even interviewed a traffic expert who explained that farmers had every legal right to use public roadways. Maybe building luxury developments in the middle of farmland wasn't the smartest planning decision, the expert suggested, to the host's audible amusement. By mid-morning, Eleanor had escalated to the county commissioner's office, demanding an emergency ordinance restricting agricultural vehicles during peak hours. Commissioner de Vys, whose family had farmed in the next county for 5 generations, politely declined. State law is quite clear on this matter, he told her. And frankly, Mrs. Grayson, there used to be a perfectly good access road that avoided this situation entirely. The unexpected consequence of Eleanor's heavy-handed tactics was a groundswell of local support for Samuel's cause. The Green Valley Diner, where Samuel had breakfast every Sunday for decades, put up a sign reading, "We stand with our farmers." The local newspaper ran an editorial questioning the HOA's urban colonization of rural areas. By Thursday afternoon, even the mayor had weighed in, stating publicly that agricultural heritage and progress can and should coexist through reasonable compromise. It was a diplomatic statement, but everyone knew which side he was really on. Friday morning brought unexpected consequences for Eleanor. The now expanded convoy of agricultural equipment was proceeding as usual when a black Lexus tried repeatedly to pass them in a no-passing zone. The driver, clearly agitated, eventually managed to pull alongside Samuel's tractor, honking furiously and gesturing for him to pull over. Samuel maintained his legal speed, giving the driver a friendly farmer's wave. That's when he recognized him, Martin Reynolds, the regional director of Eleanor's real estate firm and her direct boss. Later that day, Robert Johnson called to fill Samuel in on the gossip. Apparently, Reynolds had missed a crucial meeting with overseas investors because of the traffic delay. When he discovered that his own employee was behind the situation, causing his company significant problems, he was livid. He stormed into the Silver Ridge clubhouse looking for Eleanor. Robert told Samuel their shouting match could be heard clear across the pool deck. Something about her personal vendetta interfering with company business, Robert said. But the real turning point came that afternoon when the county newspaper hit the stands. The front page headline read, "Farm Fight Reveals Deeper Connections." Investigative reporter Sarah Chan had uncovered documents showing that Silver Ridge Phase 2 had been in planning stages for months, with preliminary designs extending directly onto Samuel's farm property. More damning were the emails between Eleanor's husband, Richard, and certain zoning officials, discussing acquisition strategies for resistant agricultural properties. They had assumed Samuel would eventually give up and sell once farming became too difficult. The article sent shockwaves through the community. By evening, Samuel's phone was ringing constantly with calls from neighbors, other farmers, and even Silver Ridge residents expressing outrage at the underhanded tactics. Eleanor attempted damage control by calling an emergency HOA meeting that night, but it quickly spiraled beyond her control. Residents who had been inconvenienced by the traffic were now directing their anger not at Samuel, but at her. "You told us this was about safety and aesthetics," one resident shouted, according to Robert, who attended. "You never mentioned you were trying to force land sales for your company's benefit." Several original homeowners, mostly retirees in their 50s and 60s, openly questioned whether Eleanor's leadership represented their interests. One distinguished-looking gentleman in his late 70s rose shakily to his feet and addressed the room. "I bought here because I wanted peaceful country living with modern amenities," he said, "not to be part of some hostile takeover of family farms. My father was a farmer. This community should be ashamed." The meeting ended with a motion to hold an emergency board election the following week, a motion that passed despite Eleanor's objections. Her carefully constructed plan was unraveling, and her position of authority along with it. That night, the mayor called Samuel personally. "Samuel," he said, "I think it's time we got everyone together to resolve this properly. County officials, HOA representatives, and you farmers. Monday morning, 9 a.m., at City Hall. Can I count on your attendance?" Samuel agreed, though not without skepticism. After all they'd been through, he wasn't about to let down his guard based on one phone call. Monday morning arrived with an atmosphere of tension and anticipation. City Hall's main conference room was packed to capacity. On one side sat the farmers Samuel, Jack, Bill, and others who had joined their impromptu coalition. On the opposite side was Eleanor, looking considerably less confident than usual, flanked by 2 HOA board members and their attorney. The county commissioners occupied the center table, with Mayor Thompson at the head. At precisely 9 a.m., the mayor called the meeting to order. "We're here to resolve a situation that has disrupted our community for too long," he began. "I expect civil discourse and a commitment to finding a solution that serves everyone's interests." Eleanor's attorney spoke first, attempting to frame the issue as a simple matter of modernizing infrastructure and community standards. His carefully worded statement never once mentioned the blocked access road. When Samuel's turn came, he didn't mince words. "For over a century, my family has farmed this land without conflict. In 1 week, concrete barriers appeared overnight, blocking access routes protected by decades of legal easements. If this was truly about community standards, why was it done in secret, without proper notice or discussion?" The room fell silent as Samuel held up the newspaper with its damning headline. "And now we know why. This was never about aesthetics or safety. It was about forcing us out to make way for more development." Eleanor's husband, conspicuously absent from the meeting, had submitted his resignation from the zoning commission the previous evening. His replacement, a 78-year-old retired judge named William Foster, spoke next. "I've reviewed the documents regarding the access road classification," he said. "The process violated multiple county ordinances regarding public notice and stakeholder input. Effective immediately, I'm reversing that decision pending proper review." Eleanor tried to interject, but Mayor Thompson cut her off. "Mrs. Grayson, EVY Denke suggests you've used your position to advance private business interests at the expense of established community members. That's not just unethical. It potentially violates county anti-corruption statutes." The color drained from Eleanor's face as murmurs rippled through the room. One of her fellow HOA board members, V.Y. Sibley, moved his chair away from hers. The meeting's most powerful moment came when Harold Jenkins, the original developer of Silver Ridge, requested to speak. At 83, his voice still commanded attention. "I built Silver Ridge to coexist with the agricultural character of this region," he said. The marketing materials prominently featured these beautiful farms as a selling point. "What's happened here isn't progress. It's a betrayal of the community's founding VY Shown." By the meeting's conclusion, the resolution was clear. The barriers would be removed immediately, and a joint committee of farmers and HOA members would establish guidelines for shared road usage and reasonable accommodations on both sides. As they prepared to adjourn, Mayor Thompson looked directly at Eleanor. "Mrs. Grayson, this committee will need leadership from the HOA. In light of recent revelations, do you think you're the appropriate person for that role?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Eleanor gathered her papers and left without another word. The concrete barriers were gone by Tuesday afternoon. The access road, used by 3 generations of the Henderson family, was open once again. The crew couldn't contain their excitement as they moved the equipment back to the fields the proper way efficiently, without disrupting traffic or burning excessive fuel. Eleanor resigned from the HOA board the following week. The new interim president, none other than Robert Johnson, proved to be a reasonable neighbor who understood the value of cooperation. They established quarterly meetings between farm representatives and HOA members to address concerns before they became conflicts. The most surprising outcome came last month when Silver Ridge launched their annual community festival. They named it the Heritage Harvest Celebration, featuring tours of local farms, including Green Valley. Children from the development now eagerly watched the tractors work the fields, the same equipment their parents once called an eyesore. This whole ordeal taught Samuel something valuable. Standing your ground doesn't always mean digging in your heels. Sometimes, it means finding creative ways to show others the consequences of their actions. Those luxury cars stuck behind his slow moving tractors did more to change minds than any argument could have. As for Samuel, he'll keep farming this land, just as his father and grandfather did before him. Only now, he does it with a new appreciation for the power of perseverance and the occasional strategic tractor convoy. Years later, Samuel's grandson, Thomas, would stand in the same fields, looking out over the same horizon. The farm had grown, adapting to new challenges and opportunities, but the values remained the same. The story of the tractor convoy had become family lore, a reminder that resilience and cruelty could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. And as the sun set over Green Valley Farm, casting its golden glow over the land, Samuel knew that the legacy of the Henderson family would endure not just in the soil they tilled, but in the lessons they passed down through the generations. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.